Power and purpose personified, walking towards justice, fighting for freedom. This is Speaking Now, empowering the next generation to know how to live with confidence and precision, to move with mastery and meaning. This is a spirit that is free, traveling one coast to the next, escaping the comforts of home. This is finding new friends and exploring the warrior within to destinations amazing, to destinations unknown. This is what it means to keep pounding, to cheer for the home team without hesitation. This is love and life, success and sacrifice. This is Yolanda Trotman, and this is The Conversation.
Hello, 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 everyone. Hello. Happy hump day to you. My name is Yolanda Trotman, and welcome, welcome, welcome to The Conversation. If you joined us last week and you've been following the new changes here for season 4, yes, season 4 of The Conversation, the shows are a little bit more intentional for a reason. So we're doing 2 live shows a month. That won't change. But what we are doing we're doing shows that are based on particular themes. So if you missed last week's show was called The Great Check-In, and this month's theme has been all about love. Last week's show was a live show with Justin Perry, and we were talking about self-care, mental health awareness, and just being able to put ourselves in the position to better take care of ourselves so that we can better take care of each other. Now, tonight's show, we're going in a completely different direction. Our show about love tonight is about how do we love each other? How can we better love each other, and particularly in our dating relationships, our love relationships, and ultimately our long-term relationships, if that is, in fact, the end game. So this is a show for the fellas, actually. So, well, maybe not necessarily a show for the fellas, but it's definitely a show where we're going to be talking about dating and relationships from a man's point of view. And I specifically wanted men for these first 2 shows for season 4 of The Conversation to be men, because I wanted to make sure that we were hearing from men who are experts in their field on issues and topics that are important to our audience. So if you're just joining us, sit back and relax. Couple of things that I need you to do as always. If you have questions, put your questions in the chat. We will see your questions. We will get to as many questions as we can. If you have not already done so, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is The Conversation with Yolanda Trotman. If you search for it, the channel will pop right up. Make sure you click the bell to subscribe. Slide on over to IG if you have an Instagram profile, and make sure you follow at The Convo Pod Show. And of course, like the Facebook page, which is The Conversation with Yolanda Trotman. You can find all of that at The Convo Pod Show. So literally, if you Google it, it will all pop up. So make sure, if you haven't already done so before tonight, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel at The Conversation with Yolanda Trotman. And of course, definitely go over to the website, because we are updating with all season 4 episodes. If you missed any of last seasons 1, 2, and 3, all of those episodes, including the Instagram live episodes, you can find them there at The Convo Pod Show. So, who loves you, baby? That's what we're talking about tonight. We are going to be talking about relationships, and I need you to tune in and chime in. This is a free-for-all, if you will, talking about dating and relationships. Drop a heart in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from throughout. Let us know city and state, whether you're local to the Charlotte area where we are. If you're watching from other places, we definitely want to know that. And if you have questions for our guest, Troy, make sure that you put them in the comments. So let's get started, shall we? So like I said, these 2 shows are about love. And when I reached out to Troy initially, what I loved about his page, and I started following him on Instagram some time ago, was just how practical his advice was. Obviously, his delivery is entertaining, it's funny, but if you really are paying attention to whether it's a quote or just a simple piece of advice, it all makes sense. So when I reached out to him, I asked him, what is it that you want to talk about? And obviously, some of the things that I wanted to talk about on this show in terms of how we can better to bridge the gap, if you will, between men and women. So without further ado, welcome to the show, certified life and relationship coach, and what we call a reality expert. We're going to talk about that in a second. Welcome to the show, none other than Troy Spry. Hey, 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 hey. How are you?
What's going on?
Well, listen, thank you for joining us. I'm so excited. We were definitely able to make this work tonight
Yes.
for this special live show. If you're
Mm-hmm.
tuning in at the top of the hour, drop a heart. Let us know where you're watching from for sure. But let's get right to it.
Let's do
Who
it.
in the
Let's do it.
world is this guy, Troy Spry? Yeah, I made it rhyme. I made it rhyme.
Yay, I
Who
like it.
is
I
Troy
like it.
Spry?
I like it. That's that quality hosting you right there.
Well,
Making it
I'll do what I
rhyme.
can.
So Troy Spry, first and foremost, is a husband and a father. So those are my number one duties in the world, is to be a great husband and to be a great father. And so that's who I am at the core. Also a great brother and a great son as well, right? So I try to be those things. But in terms of professionally, I'm a certified dating and relationship coach. I'm a speaker, and I'm an author of the book Teach Me How to Love, Why What You Don't Know Will Hurt You. Emphasis on the word will, because what you don't know will hurt you. So we just got to seek more knowledge when it comes to love and dating and relationships. But what I try to do is I try to help people get out of their own way in love, right? That's it. I try to help people get out of their own way. And the way I do that is just through different mediums. I mean, you follow me, you've seen, whether it's a reel, whether it's a post, whether it's a quote or a video or a live event or a book, whatever it is. I just want to bridge the gap between men and women. And so the mission is very simple. It's better people, better mates, better relationships, and better communities. Because I believe they all go together. But we got to start first with being better people. And so that's just kind of who I am. In a nutshell, outside of work, I'm a noob, So I'm a noob. I love basketball. I love Duke basketball. So that's just kind of in a nutshell who I am.
Oh, wait. Troy,
You heard what I
Duke?
said. You heard what I said.
Oh, man.
You heard what I said.
And that's tonight's show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. I think we can rock it out. We can rock it out a little while longer. Angie, I see you. Lonzel, thank you for tuning in. Drop a heart. Let us know where you're watching from. Okay, but how would you've told us about who you are, but give me 3 adjectives that describe you. Just 3 adjectives, not phrases. Adjectives.
Not phrases. Adjectives. I would say ambitious. I would say caring. I would say real, right? Transparent and real. Those are the 3 things.
And you are married, yes?
Yes, I am.
How would your wife describe you? What 3 words would she describe you? Or how would she describe you?
How she would describe me would be a little different, probably. She'd probably be like direct is one way she would describe me. She would probably say, she wouldn't say I'm kind. She would not say I'm kind. She wouldn't, because she seems to think that I'm like, just because I am very blunt and direct with the way I do things, she thinks she's like, I wouldn't describe you as kind. She would call me ambitious though. And she would call me, I would say like some between the mix of like overly concerned about like legacy. So the word, I don't even know how you describe that word, but conscious. That would be a good word. So conscious about what I do in the world. So conscious would be another one.
Excellent. So, okay. So where are you from originally, for people who don't know?
I am from Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay. And you're in Charlotte, in the Charlotte area now?
Yes. So I live in Charlotte. I've been in Charlotte since 2011.
So what brought you here?
Now. Work, my day job. So my day job is what brought me to Charlotte. So I'm in pharmaceuticals in my day job. And so I was in pharmaceutical sales and pharmaceutical leadership, and now I'm in pharmaceutical marketing. So that's kind of where my career is taking me.
Interesting. So I when I was reading up on you, I saw that you had your undergraduate degree in psychology, which is natural for what you do. But was that an interest that you had in other words, were you the kid who people came to ask you advice of certain things, or how were you as a kid as it relates to that part of what you love?
Oh yeah, it's so funny how God just puts you in position from a young age, right? It's like you start seeing things that you grew up being, and that was one of them. I was the guy. I was that guy. Number one, I wrote all the letters from my homeboys whenever they wanted to talk to girls. I wrote all the letters and all the poems. All that stuff was my thing, and I always loved relationships. Loved it. Always loved dating. Always loved those topics, and so I was the guy giving advice all of the time. Didn't even know I was in that position until I got, into this, until I got a line. But that's how it was ever since a young age.
So was this before like your preteen years? Of course, for people who might be a little younger, when we actually wrote letters and folded them up and did all of that and passed them to someone, like before there was social media and cell phones, and we had to use a dime to make phone calls out in the public, like all of those types of things. So okay, so were you the facilitator, or were you like the player master and you just put men in position, or put your friends in position so they could get the girl?
It was the facilitator. I was kind of like I was given the guidance on it, and I wasn't always like great with women or in any way. Like when I was young, I was awkward, just like any other young teenage boy. It wasn't until I kind of like started to understand myself, become comfortable in who I was, that then I became attractive to women. And so then I started to understand women at a different level, because you got to have interactions to start to understand them, right? And so it wasn't until I was probably in high school. But I didn't really find myself probably until late high school, about to go into college.
Okay. And so in high school, would you consider yourself extroverted or more introverted?
I've been an extroverted person probably most of my life. It's just, I wasn't necessarily a confident person in that area. So, could get along with anyone, but didn't necessarily have the confidence until I kind of got more involved. I was into sports. And once I became like, you get a little bit of status at a young age, then you start to feel yourself a little bit. You start to feel a little more confident, get a little more attention. And so then you start to handle yourself a little bit differently.
And so where did you graduate from high school in Columbia?
Yes, I went to AC4 high school.
Okay. And so when you left and you went to, I'm sorry, let me back up. Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have a twin sister, actually.
Do you really?
I'm a twin. Her name's Joy. So it's Troy and Joy.
And are you all so much alike, or are you polar opposites?
Polar opposites. So different. So
How
different
so?
in so many ways. Like, she's probably a little more introverted than I am. She's like one of those people that comes to a party or something, and unless she knows you, she's not gonna really talk to you much until she comes out of that shell. That kind of person. She's a lot more I was always a little more academic than her, right? She was kind of like, I'm gonna get through, I'm gonna do just enough to get through, and I'm gonna go make some money. Right. I was more like, I want to be a high achiever in school and get great grades and all those kind of things. So not that we both had different paths, but we were just different in how we approach things. Right. I was more of a pleaser to my parents, and she was more rebellious. So it's kind of like we're just different. That's all.
So you weren't the one sneaking out of the house at night. I don't know if I don't want to get you hemmed up, but you weren't the one sneaking out of the house or any of that.
I wasn't that. I mean, I did little things here and there, but nothing to where it was like overly sneaky. Like she was gonna make it happen. Like she figured out, how to make stuff happen. She also was way more street savvy than I was. I guess maybe it was a circle she hung in or whatever it might be. I was a little more sheltered, a little more straight laced. But she was like, if I want to go somewhere and be street savvy, I had to take my sister with me. She knows how to handle herself.
She see that she might get you after this.
She knows it though.
That's okay.
We just different. She knows it. She knows that she's built different than I am,
I love it. And so if you're catching us at the top of the hour, this is Troy Spry. I'm Yolanda Trotman. You're joining us here on The Conversation. We are talking about relationships and dating, specifically from a male's perspective, because oftentimes a male's perspective, in particular a Black male's perspective, is not always in the forefront of media in terms of healthy relationships. And before we got started, you and I were talking offline about, making sure that we're starting to, to do something about this disconnect. And I don't want to get too far ahead of that, because what I wanted to talk about is, well, why psychology? If you were the one who were putting, people together, and then obviously your degree is in psychology, did you pursue that outside of college, or did you go into a different direction?
Yeah, I went to a different direction. So psychology was just because I love the study of human behavior. That's really why. I found it interesting. It was probably one of the only subjects where I could really dive into without feeling like it was a waste of time. Some of those subjects you're like, unless you have like a discipline, like a lawyer or a doctor. But it was like one of these things where I'm like, I love studying people. And so that's why I chose psychology. Now, ultimately, at one point, I wanted to be like a school psychologist or maybe like an industrial organizational psychologist. Those were thoughts. And then I realized how much more school I had to do for that. And I was like, you know what? The investment wasn't worth it for me. And so I was able to get a really good job in pharmaceuticals right out of college. And so I never looked back on it. But this kind of fills my cup in terms of coaching people and being a dating relationship coach. So it fills my cup.
So when did you decide to become certified? Because most people say, okay, dating and relationship coach, what does that mean? Because there's people all over the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Some who remain nameless, who are self-professed, experts, but they're not. They haven't had the training. They haven't had the certification or any of that. What does that really mean? And what does it, and how does one become certified as a life and I want to make sure I'm getting it right, as a life and relationship coach?
Yeah, so I'm certified at both, but I kind of transitioned myself more of a dating and relationship coach, and not as much of the life coaching stuff. I still do it, but not as much as I do dating and relationship coaching, because it seems like that's where the audience started to grow around. And I said, you know what, let me just stay in this lane, more specifically, right? So I niche myself a little bit more there. But what I will say is this. So I got certified. Here's the thing. I didn't even know that it was a such thing as a relationship coach. I just happened to be on Twitter one day. And so there's a big coach in the space named Stefan Labassiere. And so I saw him on Twitter one day. He's probably one of the biggest in the space. And I saw his title said relationship coach. And I was like, what is a relationship coach? And so guess what I did? I reached out to the brother and I said, hey, tell me about this relationship coaching thing. And so I drove down to Atlanta, met with him. We talked about building a platform. We talked about getting certified. He showed me how to get certified as a coach through a certification company. And I said, I wanted to be certified because of this exact question, right? I wanted to make sure I had some kind of credential behind my name. But I can honestly tell you, I just live in the space. So I study it. I research it. I'm like, if I'm not doing my day job working, I'm listening to stuff. I'm absorbing. So I'm reading books. I'm reading, articles. I'm reading data. I'm reading all these kind of things to say, you know what? If I'm going to be an expert in this, then I have to be one step ahead of everybody else in terms of how I view things. And so that's kind of what's built the expertise over time. And then, of course, as you go through it, as you coach people, as you get results, then the clients speak for you after that. Right? As you get results from people, that's where I tell people, I don't even sell like my book anymore. I just say, hey, go read the reviews on it. Right? Or I go read the testimonials. Those are the things now that help me feel even more certified than even the test or the classes I went through. You see what I mean? So I feel even more strong about it now than even I did when I got the certification.
So when you get certified, is it like a one-shot deal here? You're certified and that's it, or is there continuing education or things that you have to do after that?
Yeah, so you don't have let's just be honest. You don't have to be certified to be a coach, right? You can just call yourself a coach and call it a day. So that's just the truth. I got certified one time, went through a program online, got my little certificate, and ever since then I've been doing my own certifications. That's what I've been doing, not anything official. I hadn't gone through a coaching federation after that for continued training or anything like that. I've been doing my own work. So that's kind of how I approach it.
So when I was researching you, you listed yourself as, it was listed as a reality expert. What in the world does that mean?
So that's something I just coined myself, for marketing purposes, right? So people would ask that question right there. And so for me, reality, so I always said, like, this is, when I first started, one of my taglines was where inspiration meets reality. And so what I was trying to get across to people was I wanted to be the person in this space who spoke from a very direct, transparent point of view. I wanted to be the person that didn't sugarcoat anything, but also that was very balanced at what he was doing. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to call myself reality expert because I'm going to talk about what's really happening and not what the theory is, not what all the books just say, but what's really happening in the space. And so that's why I coined myself a reality expert.
And so when you became certified, did you do them at the same time? Was it a life coach and then separately as a relationship coach, or did you do them at the same time?
Same time. I did it all in one program. It was through a program called Fowler Wainwright. So I did it through that program.
And so for those of you just joining us, if you have questions for Troy, make sure you drop them in the comments. If you have comments, drop them in the comments, because we're going to be tackling as many questions as we can this evening. So let's get to the nitty gritty.
Let's do it.
So one of the things that I think that is telling, and of course I do a lot of family law, been doing it for almost 18 years now, backing out the time that I was on the bench. And one of the things that still remains true, without a doubt, because I just looked it up today to make sure that it was correct, that first-time marriages are still at a 50% chance, or have a 50% chance of ending in divorce.
Yep.
Still.
Still.
So why is that? And that's a question I pose to those of you who are watching. Why do you think relationships now in 2022? Now, let's take the pandemic out of it, because some of that may have had something to do with it. But I'm just saying in general, why is it that first time marriages, not second, third time, because third time's not necessarily a charm, but first time marriages are still at that 50% rate where they you may or you may not make it. Why do you think that is? But those of you who are watching, drop in the comments, why is it that you think that they're still not making it past that 50% mark?
Oh yeah, it's such a layered question, because there's so many things that's going into play at the same time. But what I would say, I would start with this. So the one thing is, what the data would suggest too, though, is if people get married older, then they tend to have longer lasting marriage. The rates go up in terms of success in marriage, right? So I think it's after the age of like 28. So a lot of people that skew the data too are people who are very young getting married. So you're, 19, 20, 21. Imagine being in a marriage, 19, 20, 21. And so you don't even have life skills yet, more or less relationship skill or marriage skill. And then you start having kids early. And then you throw another dynamic into a situation that you aren't even ready for. And now you throw a kid into it, and you have no conflict resolution skills, no communication skills. All of the skills involved in marriage, you don't even have at those young ages. Now, there's also this group of people who are older and still don't have those skills. It's one of the reasons I write the book. It's called Teach Me How to Love While What You Don't Know Will Hurt You. Because what's happening is most people's example of marriage and love and marriage is just what they saw growing up. So if the divorce rate is 50%, right? And the kids of those divorcees are not learning anything new, what's bound to happen?
Right.
What's bound to happen? Because you didn't learn anything new about how to be in a relationship or how to communicate, right? You didn't learn any new skills around this, but yet you're going to go and do it because you felt strongly about someone. You fell in love with someone, or the society told you that's what you were supposed to do. But who's really preparing people for this? It's a skill that no one is even teaching, right? Well, people are teaching it, but most people aren't seeking it. But so that's, to me, that's one of the biggest reasons that, number one, is people get married early a lot of times, and so they're not even ready. They don't even have identities. But then number two, people aren't learning skills to get better at marriage. And so you ask people to invest in themselves. You say, hey, go take a course, go read a book, go to a conference. They don't want to do all that because they think they should just know. Think about marriage in itself. Marriage is not a easy entity. It's two people who have to be interdependent. And if no one is teaching you the skills that it takes to be interdependent, and you haven't done your own work to heal yourself, how's that going to work? So to me, there's no surprise that the divorce rate is that high. No surprise whatsoever for me.
Well, I think Beverly makes a good point. And hey, Beverly, we see that people are not on the same financial plan, which I definitely see in my practice. Money, all of that becomes a problem, especially for women who are the primary earners. I see that a lot. And I also see it in particular, sometimes the tragedy of it, particularly if we're looking at this from traditional gender roles of women. And I see it all too often who they both come into the relationship are at about the same level, husband and wife. Her career takes off. She's doing well financially, all of those things. Nobody got a prenup. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, God. Of course.
That's a whole nother topic, but my goodness, even if you feel like you don't have anything or that prenups are for rich people, they're not. I promise you, they're not. Free piece of advice, get one. But we'll get to that later. But I think she makes a good point there. She also talks about immaturity, to your point, in terms of people coming in relationships, assuming that they just know what they know or they can work it out. And they're doing so for love and not for longevity. And I think there's a difference between the two. But do you think longevity is even realistic in a social media world? Because it sounds like, I mean, even in some of the research that I did before this show, it's just social media is ruining relationships, is ruining communication, is ruining how people just basically communicate with each other. And again, don't want to get too far ahead because that's a whole, we're going to get to that. But Does that have anything to do with it in terms, and from your opinion, as far as why this 50% mark, why we're still at this 50% mark at 2022?
Oh yeah, I mean all of those are variables. So
Mm-hmm.
I always say this though, like social media is not, it's not ruining relationships. People are still ruining relationships, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's social media is a tool just like anything else. So if you are still a person who doesn't communicate well, if you are a person who's dishonest or not loyal, social media is just gonna make you more of who you already are. That's all. That's all it's gonna do. So what happens is, now what has happened is social media has made people more available to each other. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so now that increases this level of FOMO. And so now people aren't as willing to work through things with someone because they're like, oh, I can just swipe left, I can swipe right, and I can just find someone new. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it has decreased staying power. I do think that because people have so much more available to them, so readily available to them. And so, yeah, social media plays a role in it, but I don't think it's the catalyst for the divorce rate. I don't think that at all. I think it's just people still not having skills, people still not knowing what it takes, people not doing their own work, not understanding
Mm-hmm.
their own healing journey. And I think those are the things that are more, I would put those at a higher level than just social media. Right, because if you were going to cheat, right, think about it. I mean, so one of the reasons people leave and stuff is cheating and stuff like that. Well, if you were going to do it, whether you do it through a DM or whether you do it with the woman at the coffee shop, you still was going to do it probably. You see what I mean? So to me, I don't think it's social media per se, but I do think it plays a little bit of a role. And to touch on your point about finances, right? So you said a lot of times you see these dynamics with finances where the woman takes off. And so I think men have to get a little more comfortable with understanding that they have value beyond their money, because a lot of times this causes like these, what do you call them, these nasty like ego trip battles going on within a marriage. Everybody's trying to figure out who has the biggest piece of chicken because I make the most money. When we have to start understanding how do we coexist even if one person makes a little bit more money? What is the value I bring, as a man beyond just money? Because what men have been taught is what their value
Be a provider.
is in their check.
Mm-hmm.
And so we keep socializing that in men and then wonder why, when they don't have as much money, they feel worthless. They feel like they're not valuable. And so there's so many layers to all this stuff.
Well, I see a couple of questions in the comments
Mm-hmm.
that I want to jump on, but I think one of the thing is that, and I knew Harry was going to say this, but we use
Mm-hmm.
men as an example, but from a male's
Mm-hmm.
perspective, women are in DMs just like men are,
Yeah, absolutely.
and probably and smarter about it, probably.
Way smarter.
But I'm just saying, and I think as a single woman, I think that one of the things, and I'm going to get specifically to Angie's question first, but my goodness, like married men, just sir, what are you doing? Like, why are you in people's messages and all that? And I think in conversations with single male friends of mine, a lot of it's like, well, I mean, like you said, accessibility, it's plenty availability out there in terms of other options, if you will. But at the same time, it's discouraging for women who are single out here, where they are having this influx. And ladies, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But, married men or men who are clearly not available to them, reaching out as us. I don't know what the assumption is. Maybe we're desperate. I don't know. But just this influx of men who think it's okay to do that. That it's still okay to shoot their shot, if you will, even though that they're in a relationship or they're in a marriage, either not disclosing it or we figure it out, whatever the case may be. So I don't think I don't think the end game is different, but I do think how that game is played is different.
Oh yeah.
And even if you check a man, say, hey man, don't say something to me in this DM that you wouldn't say if your wife was looking over your shoulder. And even then it's like, oh, she don't care, or we in an open marriage. Again, we're going to get to that too, because what does that really mean? What does that really mean?
Yep.
But I mean, those are the things I think that, from a woman's perspective, some of the frustrations we have. But I want to get to the first question. Angie asked, what do you think about the phrase, it's cheaper to keep her? Now, that's old school.
It is old school.
But I'm your perspective, my perspective might be a little different. But what do you think about that? Good question.
Yeah, I guess the question for me is it worth your peace though? Right. So you have to decide what's more valuable to you. Is it your funds or is it your peace? And so if you're in an unhealthy situation, If it's bad for you and it's dysfunctional and it's all of these things, why would you stay? I mean, you can always make more money, but you don't get more time, right? You don't get more time.
Say that again. Say that again.
You can always make more money, but you don't get more time. And so if you stay in an unhealthy, bad relationship that's not being worked out, that's not being worked through, there's no resolution to it, why would you sacrifice years of your life being unhappy and miserable because you're worried about the money? Find a way to make more money is what I would say. So I don't believe it's cheaper to keep her. If I'm miserable, I'm not living that way.
Well, my perspective is a little different. Having seen this, had this come up in consultations over the years. And sometimes it's the opposite. Is it cheaper to keep him? Because oftentimes that's the issue that I see with women making much more, prenup. And now she's staring down the possibility of having to now pay him alimony because of whatever the situation is. And I think the short answer to Angie's question, like you said, it depends on the circumstances. And I do think you make an excellent point as far as time. But usually when people ask that question, they're asking it because they're trying to figure out a way to not give what may be reasonable to their spouse, or they're trying to keep funds, or they're trying to hide funds, or they're trying to figure out ways to hide funds or do things of that nature in order to avoid that once they start to develop their exit strategy. So I think part of it depends on what is your motivation. Is your motivation to hide your money so that he or she can't be able to get it? If that's the case, then that question is clearly going to be, yeah, it's cheaper, but let me do what I need to do to prepare myself. But the short answer is any decent attorney is going to be able to find that. You can't just you can't hide it forever.
You can't just put it in the
There's
mattress.
going to be you could, but that's still marital.
It is
still subject to distribution. Sorry, like somebody gonna get new coins. I'm just saying, but it's important because it depends on what the motivation is. But that's an excellent question, Angie. And for those of you who are tuning in, if you have questions for Troy, make sure that you drop them in the comments. Now, Mary, on the other hand, I think makes an excellent point in terms of people finding themselves, and this kind of goes back to what you said. And I'm gonna push this for a second in terms of being able to have mature conversation, growth, how to grow together. But what does it mean, this whole perfect union idea? Because we are inundated with romantic comedies, particularly comedies that are geared towards Black folk. Let's just put that out there. And the storylines are often the same. Or if you're a Hallmark fan, the storylines are often the same. Whatever the case may be, in terms of having this, there's always, there's this getting to know you stage, there's this major conflict, and then suddenly they work it all out in 2 hours. Yeah. And I think she makes an excellent point that you don't see, if this is all you see, if this is what you see on Hallmark, if this is what you see in movies, if you see this on a repeated basis, you may not understand that conflict is beyond just whatever you're going through at that time. Now, from a relationship standpoint, how do you tell people, men and women, especially if the values are different, but they have those other things, the mature conversation, they have similar financial goals, and they have that, how do they work through those types of issues to be able to have, mature growth? I think that's a good point she makes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think here's the thing. I think the death to a lot of relationships start before the relationships even start because of this thing, because of this unrealistic expectation that's set up for marriage, because of the romanticism of marriage. I mean, we're only societies that, romanticizes marriage, right? The Western civilization. And so it's like one of these things where it's like, you have to see that marriage is an institution beyond just love. There's more involved in it. It takes more than love and lustful feelings for it to be for it to have longevity. So that's the first thing we got to do is like stop being unrealistic with people. This is one of the reasons why I don't like how couples tend to only highlight the positive parts of being in a relationship or the positive parts of being in a relationship. Now, you don't have to tell everybody your dirt, but what I am saying though is when you're talking and you're counseling other couples and people like that, are you telling them the reality of what seasons look like in a relationship? Because there's these seasons where you got to grow together. That's what one of her points is, right? It's like, how do we grow together? And what happens if one person is growing at a faster rate than another person? What does that conversation look like? And this is why I think values have to align, because when the values don't align initially, then those are the things. The values tend to keep people together long term when they have similar values, where even when they grow, their values still stay the same and they still remain, so that the relationship continues to grow. But when they don't align at all, then what happens is once the lust is over, after the lust is over, the feel good part of it, which is usually lasts about 18 months, after about 18 months or so, that's when people start getting real about stuff. And now they have to have real skills to actually continue their relationship. You see what I'm saying? And so to me, we have to have better expectations on the front end if we want to have better relationships on the back end. We just gotta have
what does that mean? What does that mean? And Renzino, Raphael, I see your question. We're going to get to in a second. Yep. But what does that mean? Because what are reasonable expectations? And I'm going to preface this, and then I want you all to chime in as well, because I'm just speaking from the perspective as a woman who is single. Like, what is, because on one hand, we're all told, and or at least the image is out there, to be clear, be intentional in terms of what it is that you want, that type of thing. But at the same time, you have others that are out saying, well, you got to lower your expectations if you're going to want a man. It's like, you can't have it both ways. Like, you're supposed to, obviously make sure you take care of yourself, self-assess, do all the work, put in the work, if you will. But if what you desire is a Black man, for example, which is what I desire, then you have to lower your expectations to be able to find the love relationship that you're seeking, which is counterproductive completely. And then you have this secondary, I don't know if I want to say this secondary thing that you always hear. Well, but you always attract, where you are in your life. I think the laws of attraction are important to an extent, but I think that's not always, that's clearly not always true. So that's like three things going on in one. So let's break that down. So first, let's go back to law of attraction. Is it really true that in dating relationships, that what you put out is what you're going to automatically receive in terms of the people who are going to be attracted to you, et cetera, so forth in the dating game?
I don't believe that's necessarily true. I do believe that sometimes you attract the broken parts of you, right? Because it depends sometimes. Like sometimes, like, when you are like, say your self-esteem is low, say you don't feel great about yourself. Sometimes there are people that prey on that. And so now you're attracting a certain type of person that might take advantage of that. And so I think at the end of the day, it's not just about, so attraction is important. Who you attract is important, but it's really about discernment more than it is about attraction, about who you attract. So I can attract all kinds of people. I can attract women that I would never date, but that doesn't mean I have to choose those women. You see what I mean? And so I think we got to stop depending on this idea of I just go with what's attracted to me. No, number one, what energy do you put out? What boundaries do you set? And what do you allow in and out of your life? And so to me, that's a more empowered approach than what just comes to me. You see what I mean? It's just like anything else. Like some people attract opportunities all the time. They attract, good opportunities that make their life better and more fulfilled. Why is that a lot of times? Because they are putting themselves out there and they are giving off a certain type of energy that says, you know what? I need her in my life. It could be for work. It could be for play. It could be for anything. But those same people attract the maggots too. Those same people attract the leeches.
Did you say maggots?
Yes. Those same people can attract the leeches too, that want to come and get your money. You see, there's some people that are going to want to give you the money. And there's some other people that are going to want to take your money. The question is, what do you allow? What are the boundaries that you set in your life? And so we got to stop depending solely on just what comes our way. Like, and here's the other thing. I encourage people all the time. Be proactive about what you want, because if that's the case, now you can go seek that instead of just receiving what comes to you. And then you sit back in your life and you're like this, and you're like, oh, I only get these kind of men that come to me. Well, were you pursuing, or I won't use the word pursue, what were you putting yourself in positions to be around the caliber of person that you really wanted? Like, what were you really doing with your time and with your life? Were you being intentional about those things? So to me, it's not, to answer the question, no, it's not. You don't just attract who you are, but there are people that will be attracted to the broken pieces of you.
Very good. Very good. So Renzino had a question. How do you, this is a big one, how do you effectively build trust once it has been broken? a number of times. And Ranzina, I don't know, do you mean trust with that same person or just trust over the course of relationships? If you can drop that in there too, because I think there's a difference.
Yes,
either way, when trust is broken, there's going to be a problem in terms of, especially if it's happened many times in a relationship versus just being in love relationships that have trust or have there been trust issues. Now, I guess you want to probably answer this from a perspective, maybe from a life coaching perspective. Yeah. But however you choose to answer that, this question is huge because, you know, people have to get through that. And, you know, people, let's just start there. Let's start there.
Let's do
Great
it.
question.
Let's do it. Like trust to me is ultimate, right? That's the foundation of a relationship, correct? And so the first thing I would say is this: whenever you're trying to rebuild trust, number one, you have to have sincere remorse for what it is that you did. Right? What was it that you did? And not this whole like, I'm sorry if you were hurt kind of thing. But do you have sincere remorse for what it is that you did? And if you have sincere remorse, it can be felt. People know when you're sincere and when you're not. Right? So do you have sincere remorse? And do you express that sincere remorse? You can't just sit back and be like, well, you know, I'm sorry. No. You need to express your sincere remorse for whatever it is that you have done. Number two, you have to stop the behavior. So you can't say you want to rebuild trust with someone and continue to do the same thing to them over and over. That doesn't work because at some point it's going to be broken completely. So you have to do that. You have to apologize for what you did. You have to change your behavior. And then how is trust built? Through consistency of action. That's it. Consistency of action. So now you have to be the person that does exactly what you said you were going to do all the time. You have to do it consistently. That's how trust is built. Most people come into it giving you that level of trust. They believe that you're going to say what you're going to do. Well, if you break it over and over and over again, then what's going to happen? Now you got to do something over and over and over again that is positive to replace that trust that you broke. So you have to be willing to do that. And the other piece is now you have to be fully transparent. Okay? There is no privacy anymore. There's full transparency about what you're doing and where you're at and who you're with and all these other kind of things. Now you have to be open to full transparency because that person doesn't believe you because you keep doing the same things over and over and over again. So to me, that's what it's about. It's hard to do. It's easier said than done, right? But you have to do those 4 steps just to get started. You got to be okay. You got to be okay with that.
But let's say for the sake of argument, you're not the person who broke the trust, but you're on the receiving end of that person's trust you're on the receiving end of whatever that person did to you to cause you not to trust them. Now let's look at it from that perspective. Yeah. How does that person heal to be able to be open to trust that person again once that's been broken?
Yeah, it's extremely hard. Number one, you have to ask yourself, what are your clear expectations of that person now? See, a lot of times we want somebody to build trust back with us, but we don't even know how that looks. So what are your clear expectations of that person?
Wait, say that again.
So we want someone to rebuild trust with us, but we don't even know what their process looks like. We don't even know what it looks like. So you can't even instruct the person on what you need from them. You just want them to somehow have a magic bullet to say, hey, now I built your trust back. No, what are your clear expectations? What is it that you need from me in this season? Now that I'm trying to rebuild your trust, what are the things that you clearly need from me? You have to be able to map those out. And then the other piece of it is this. Sometimes the trust being broken leads back to a trigger somewhere else where somebody lost your trust. So do you even know where it's coming from? Some people, you ever seen people who like some small infraction happens and they take it like it's like the biggest thing in the world? So they make something this small, they make it extreme, and their partner is sitting there like, I don't understand why this is such a big deal. But really it was attached to a trigger from something that happened in their childhood or long ago, something that makes it bigger than what it is, and they don't even understand where it came from. So they're mad at this person. You ready to divorce this person because they left the sugar out on the counter. What was you really mad about becomes the issue. What were you really upset about? And then once you do that work, now you can better give direction. You can even own it a little bit more and say, you know what? This is why I reacted the way I reacted. So now I need you to understand where I'm coming from and not do these things for these reasons. You see what I mean? So sometimes we don't even know how to track it back to why we respond the way we respond to some things. And so that's what we got to trace it back. Trace it back. That's the only way I can see it.
So takeaways, if you are the person who has broken that person's trust, then you're going to have to be transparent. You're going to have to be consistent, and it has to be shown in what you do, not necessarily what you say, because words are just that. If you're on the other end of that and you are the person who is trying to look at someone to trust them again, then it sounds like what you're saying is to be intentional, like think through what that looks like. You know, if this hadn't happened, what does trust look like? What is it that what are your expectations from that person in terms of rebuilding? Now, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to
you're saying it
break
right.
that
That's
down.
exactly right.
Okay. Yep. And so, this is another question. I'm not sure, Raphael, if this is a question or more of a comment, but I think it's a good one. Now, the big thing is now when you get that soul tie with someone, and you got to define what that is for somebody doesn't know what that is. How do you work moving away from someone that you have a soul tie with? First of all, what is a soul tie? To how in the heck do you pull out of that? Because child, that ain't easy.
It ain't easy. Here's the first thing too. So the first thing I'm just gonna say it, is sometimes people say they have a soul tie. It's really just a sex tie. That's all it is.
Can you say that again? Say that again.
So you think you got a soul tie, but it's really just a sex tie. You just like having sex with this person. They make you feel wanted. They make you feel neat. They make you feel your body feel good, and so you feel connected to that person because you got all these oxytocin going on and all these hormones raging, and they're coming together, and you feel like you're in love, right? So let's just first of all let's understand that there's a difference. Soul ties are more spiritual. Right? It's more like you exchange this energy, and this can't happen through sex. And it's more like you're connected internally. It's not just a physical thing, but usually it's caused by the sex. Usually that's the thing that is driving this. And so guess what? The first thing you got to do is stop having sex with the person. Right? Number one, you got to remove yourself from that. You got to stop being intimate with this person, and then you got to stop connecting with this person. So what I mean by connection? You got to stop phone calls. You got to stop text messages. You got to stop responding to DMs. You got to stop following them on social media. Right?
That's huge. Oh, that's huge. Oh my God, that's so huge because it's so easy to just kind of slide in, look at the stories, whatever.
And they know you watching. They know you watching.
Yeah, they know you watching.
Just so you watch it.
Right. So do you do the opposite where you just obviously remove them from social media, but do you do the big block or the big restrict? Do you go to that extent?
Oh, I direct my clients to block. Yes, you have to block. And not the stuff where you block one day, then you unblock them the next day, and you go look, and then you block them again. No, you gotta block. You gotta give yourself space to now do that self-reflection piece. Right? What was my role in this? Why is it that I'm so connected to this person? Why isn't that I'm not getting what I want, desire out of this person? What's caused this me to want to break this soul tie? Because what happens ultimately is there's a reason most times you want to break it, correct? Well, we'll skip over the reason to have the feeling. You see, we'll skip over the whole reason. We know this person is bad for us. We know that they don't want a relationship. We know that they don't want anything serious. They don't even desire marriage. We know they treat us bad when we're not having sex. They know these things, but for the sake of the feeling, the 30 minutes that they get out of it, right?
If
you're lucky, all right, or the 30 minutes of feeling wanted, right? We'll go seek that out at the sacrifice of our inner peace. To feel bad when it's over, to feel bad when they go home, right? To feel bad when they go back to their wife. You see what I'm saying? Or when she goes back to her husband, and you left there all alone, right? We'll do those things just for the feeling. So my point is, it's not hard. You just got to break the communication. That's it. It's no. You can't have one foot in and one foot out. It don't work that way. It don't work that way. And here's what people do, Yolanda. They like to hold on to it and disguise it as friendship. That's what they do. They disguise it as friendship. Oh, well, that's my friend. No. That's not your friend. You're in love with him. You're in love with her, right? That's not just your friend. So guess what? If you want to break it, you got to break that friendship at least for a period of time so that you can get yourself together.
Now, what does that period of time look like? Because I read somewhere, because I went through this with a long-term relationship, and we call it the book was called a detox. Like, how do you detox from this person? And it was 30 days, and it kind of guided you through, like, when you have those moments, your accountability buddy, you got to have your friend that you got to be able to call. When it's like, oh girl, I would have called it so bad. What do I do? You got to have that friend to tell you to put the phone down, heifer. You better not. You like, it was helpful, but I got to say it was so hard. And this was like in, I don't know, 2010, 12, before really, DMs and all that were a thing. But imagine, now in this day and age, a woman and men the same doing a detox, trying to get that person out of their system, if you will, what that process looks like, because it's easy to say, hey, just, don't have any contact. Especially if they're trying to reach out to you or whatever. And it feels good in a moment. You hit that block. And you hit that and you unfriend them and you restrict. It's like, and then 3-4 days later, you start to get that itch. That bad choice of words. Y'all know what I mean. You get that, you got it. That maintenance, as you references, as Mary talked about. But then you got to work through that. So people aren't equipped to do that by themselves. So what coping strategies do you think that you can give people who are watching this? Like, how can they get through this on their own without help?
It's number one, it's all about, it's what you said, it's community, right? Do you have community that knows what it is that you're trying to do? Do you have people that can support you? And also, do you get back busy doing the things that that fill you up? So if all you're doing is sitting home every day, after work, drinking wine, guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna drunk text. You're gonna get the itch, right? You sit there thinking about it, you got your Mary J. Blige playing, you're doing all this stuff, and you're gonna probably make that. But if you were out with friends and community, if you were, interested, say you used to have a passion for knitting, if you had a knitting class you was going to, or if you were building a business, or if you were busy doing some of these things, you don't have nearly as much time to focus on that person. Now, the other piece though, this is the part that people don't like, is that you got to go back and figure out why you were so attached to that person, right? Is it an attachment style thing? Is it if it was a negative situation for you, if it was dysfunctional, right? Because there's a reason you want to break the soul tie, then help yourself understand, and that's maybe therapy could help. Why you need to understand why you were attracted in the first place. You need to understand why you stayed for so long. You need to understand why you were so comfortable in it. You see what I mean? And so a coach can't help you do that. I can't help you do that, but a therapist can. A therapist can help you figure out. It can help you trace back why you were so attached to that person. So sometimes if we don't know the whys, then we are bound to make the same mistakes over and over. You ever see people who tend to date the same type of person over and over?
Right.
There's a reason. There's a reason for that most times. It's not just that's my type. I hate when people say, no, it's not just that is your type. It's really that you're attracted to it, you're drawn to it for a reason. It's something that it's feeling for you. You see what I'm saying? That's what it's doing. And so you got to decide what that is. And if you don't track back why that is what it is, you're going to be in the same situation over and over and over again. So yes, is it hard? Yes. But think about it. If you were an alcoholic, all right, if you were an alcoholic and I said, you need to quit drinking, would you let me have alcohol in my house? Would you say it was a good idea to have alcohol in my house, in my cupboard? No. Right? You would say you need to get rid of the alcohol. You need to stay away from it. You need to not put yourself in positions. You need to not go to his house at 12 o'clock at night. You see what I mean? You need to not put yourself in these positions because that's the only way to do it. Is it easy? No. Nothing's easy. Nothing like this is easy. Interpersonal relationships aren't easy. It takes work and it takes intentionality.
So, and I think this may go to Raphael's point, or maybe an answer to his question, because he describes it as a legit soul tie, and that they're a connection on a spiritual level. So that may be what you're saying, like get to the heart of that. And it's not going to be a relationship coach that's going to help you get there. It may be something more therapeutic or counseling to help you get through that piece of it, because you got to unpack that. You got to unpack how it became a connection on a spiritual level. I hope that helps. Noemi, I see you chiming in from Vegas. Hey, girl. Hey. I see a couple questions because I Troy, we got to do a part 2. Like I got 4 different areas we haven't even gotten to. Like
it's
not
all
even
good.
close.
I love this.
We hadn't even gotten to it yet. But one big question, and I think this is very important for alpha females, and to understand what that means, because usually that term alpha female is thrown around a lot and it has a negative connotation. Yes. And then, of course, you have, how women should behave and how women should be. And I think it sends mixed messages. And I think Angie raises an excellent point. And I'm curious as how you would answer this from a male's perspective. So her question was, how can I stop thinking like a man and act more like a lady?
Whew,
this is like 20 minutes, but we gonna do what we can, Angie. We got you, Angie. Just hold on.
So, Angie, here's what I would say: is number one, you have to go back and redefine what femininity is to you, right? So I encourage women on this all the time. It's like your femininity is your biggest superpower, hands down. Femininity is a superpower if you're trying to attract men, and even when you move in the world, it is. You see what I mean? Because it's an attractive thing. It draws people in. Femininity draws people in, right? So number one, redefine it. What is femininity? What is it that makes you feel like a woman? What is it that makes you feel flowing, right? Remember, it's kind of a flowing energy. It's a receiving energy. That's what femininity is. I'm not a woman, so I can't tell you how to be a woman. But what I can tell you is men are attracted to women that act like women, right? So because we know what it feels like when we're in it. It's a nurturing place. It's a supportive place. So to us, to men, like we need to feel that turns us on, that makes us attracted. When you start trying to think like a man, like, okay, what is really I guess the question is, what's the benefit of thinking like a man? I don't think you need to think like a man. I think you need to just know how to choose one. All right, that's it. You don't necessarily need to think like a man. You need to be a woman, but you need to be able to identify a man.
So I'm gonna have you pause there for a second because I want to flesh this out just real quick. Angie, if you're still watching, what do you mean when you say thinking like a man? Are you talking about like strategically and like in a professional setting, in a dating situation? Like what does that mean? Like flesh that out for us if you're still on, but we'll take it from both perspectives because I read that and I think, okay, thinking like a man, does that mean in a professional standpoint? Because if you're in, say, a male dominated field, like you have to learn how to use your femininity. I had to learn that firsthand coming out of law school, being at a public defender's office, coming from an area where they were like gangs up north. So like coming back down here, like I was like, when I first got here. And then I had to learn, really had to learn. It's like, wait a minute, if I go in and I'm, touch somebody on their shoulder, or, hey, how you doing? You learn how to use that femininity to your advantage. Not necessarily your voice and how you speak, but just how you interact with people makes a big difference. So she did clarify. She said strategic thinking in relationships. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing when you're talking about strategic thinking in a relationship, because relationships have changed. Like how relationships move are very different. And I think, and I don't know if she means this, but I read that and I was like, some of the frustrations I think a lot of single women have is, one, the communication. You can't get to know me by text. Stop it.
No, you can't.
You cannot get to know somebody by text. Pick up the phone. If you're not a phone person, then do something. Video chat, do something. But you can't just. Everything is lost in words and not how a person speaks. But at the same time, I think some of the frustration that I think some people have, some women, can't obviously, but some women in my circle, it's just, you can't date me by text. Make a move. Like, don't be in my messages every morning, WYD, good morning, queen, grand rising queen, if that's your thing, or all that every day, but you don't actually ask me out. You never actually, make a suggestion that we meet for coffee or something simple. Like they don't actually do anything. And I think that's the frustration, because women don't want to feel like they have to pursue a man. But, you know, we may make a suggestion once or twice, yeah, let's get together, but we're not going to continue to do that, because no woman wants to feel like that role is reversed. And maybe I think that's part of what she thinks. Yeah, because she just gave us the hands. Like, you don't want to feel like
I totally
that you
agree.
have to go and pursue this man. But there's so much of that out here where it's just like, man, bro, just like, I don't want to feel like I'm pursuing you. Either you're interested or you're not. Most women will probably, who are watching this, will say, like, if I'm interested in a dude, if she's confident, she's going to make it known that she's interested. Now, that's what are you going to do with that? I don't know what you're going to do with that, but I'm not about to date you in a traditional sense that is completely contrary to my femininity. If you want me to be feminine, like, you can't ask me to be feminine and all of that, but then you still want me to make male moves on the regular in a dating relationship. So
no, I think
that's where she was going with that.
Okay, I get it now. I get what she's saying, and I totally agree. And I think that means you're with a misaligned man, right? So to me, like, I don't men that are into a woman, right? Like really into a woman, and they have the space for that woman in their life. That's another key, right? A lot of times these men are like, you know, throwing bait out there, hoping they can find somebody in a moment of weakness because they got other stuff going on. You see what I'm saying? But if he's available and he's really into you or interested in you, I don't see many men not being willing to say, hey, we should meet. Hey, I want to talk to you. Hey, I want to see you. You see what I'm saying? And especially men of a certain age, if they don't have the confidence to do that, that's probably not a man you're going to want anyway. That's probably not a man that you're going to want to be with anyway. So if you find yourself in situations where you're having to constantly bring it along, that's not a very masculine trait. Masculine men are assertive, they are intentional, they take initiative. And if you want a masculine man, then don't go choosing a man who is not and then be frustrated. You see what I'm saying? So strategic thinking is not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. But when you're having to find yourself being the initiator all the time, right?
Which is what she says, that she's usually the aggressor.
If you're having to be the initiator all the time, here's the other thing: are you sitting in your femininity at all? Because sometimes, right, when you lead with your masculinity, then it puts men in a position to just now sit and receive. So you see what I'm saying? And so you got to understand that if that's what you lead with, and I see this from a lot of professional women, Yolanda, I see this all the time, and I'm just going to say it. A lot of professional women approach men by putting their you know what on the table, right? They
you can say that here. This is a safe space.
Okay,
you can say that.
They put their dick on the table is what they do, right? And so,
big dick energy is not necessarily a good thing. But anyway, go ahead.
Thing. You know who you attract with that? You attract men. You attract two types of men: beta type men who are just going to want you to receive, or you attract alpha men who want to prove you wrong,
right?
Right. And so now I gotta show you mine bigger. You see what I mean? Now I gotta break you down. You see what I'm saying? So when you lead with that energy, that's what you. I'm not saying you can't be an alpha female. Whatever you want, if that's what you want to be it. But just understand, in an interpersonal relationship with another man, especially the kind of men that you tend to like, that women tend to like, you got to study him a little bit more too and understand. Nah, this ain't gonna work with him. He's not going. That's not going to attract him. That's not going to turn him on. So if you find yourself in situations where you're always leading and you're always the aggressor, ask yourself: do you lead with that kind of energy all the time? You see. So let me address something else you said. You said women don't feel like they want to pursue. Well, here's the thing: there's a difference between approaching and pursuing, right? If you approach someone and you open up the opportunity for connection, that's still feminine. That still can be very feminine. You can do that in many ways. You can do that with smiles. You can do that with compliments. You can do that with, you talked about it. You can do that in so many ways. Pursuing means now I'm the one always trying to make the plans. I'm the one telling you I need to see you. I'm the one. Now, it's such a fine balance, though, because here's the other piece in the middle is reciprocation. Most people just want reciprocation. Even the most masculine of man wants reciprocation, wants to feel like you are an active participant in the situation. You see? So there's so many layers to this. It's so many layers to it. And Angela, I'm not just talking to you. I'm not just talking that at her. I'm just saying in general, we got to start to really assess what do we want?
Mm-hmm.
What do we want? The kind of man you want is going to need someone a little more feminine. And so you got to understand, what is that? What does that look like? You know, how you smell? How do you dress? How do you speak? What's your tone like? What kind of language do you use? What kind of colors do you wear? You know, all these kind of things are part of femininity that men are attracted to. Let me ask you a question.
I ain't wearing a whole lot of pink. I just want to put that out. Anyway,
I know why you ain't wearing no pink.
No disrespect. I'm just saying.
I know why you.
I'm just saying. You know, there's more. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. I digress.
You know, what I was gonna say though is, have you, as a woman, right? As a woman, have you ever seen like an ultra feminine woman come in a room and attract all the energy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, she ain't walk in there with her thing on the table, did she?
Right.
Like, when you watch feminine women in a room, they attract all this energy, and that's why I call it a superpower.
It is. I do want to touch on this real quick because man, we're not gonna get to all of it, but we hear this all the time. We got to, but one of the big things that everybody likes to lead with when they are in new relationships or dating relationships is the grand love language. What are your love languages? Do they matter, and do they work? So for you watching, what's your love language? If you know what the love languages are, give us a quick overview. But do they matter? Do they really matter?
Yeah. Okay. So love languages matter, right? They matter to an extent. See, here's the other thing. So you can know someone's love language. You can know there's acts of service, or it's, you know, but just because it's like this. If my love language is gifts, right? Does that mean that you don't ever have to do an act of service? So as long as I buy you rings and stuff and flowers and all that stuff, does that mean I don't ever have to, you know, help you with the groceries when, you know, you come in from the garage? Does it not mean that I shouldn't wash the dishes every once in a while to help you out? You see what I mean? Like, does that not mean? So what I think happens is people get so fixated on the love language, they forget about that people are not a monolith either. This is the main thing that makes me feel love, but it doesn't mean that you get to slack everything else. Do you never get to tell me I'm beautiful or handsome just because you buy me gifts? You see? So to me, I think people oversimplify the love language. Now, here's the other thing, though. Here's the big thing. Just because you know someone's love language doesn't mean you understand how they handle conflict, though. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
And so what you've done is we know each other's love languages, but have you explored the other pieces? What about their conflict language? Like, how do they handle conflict? How do they communicate when things are not good? And so we always say, well, you just need to know each other's love language. No, you need to understand the other parts of them too. And so that's not enough. I think we oversimplified it in relationships. We're like, we just not know each other's love language and it's cute and all that stuff. No, people are multi-layered. And you got to understand so many other parts of them. And I think we do a disservice to relationships when we don't explore the depths of people outside of just that piece.
And I think some of the mistakes people make say, okay, these are my love languages. This is what I need. But they don't know how to interact with someone who has something completely different. Like, if I'm a quality time person, do words of affirmation people get on your nerves? Because we don't need to hear all that, but that other person needs to hear it. Or that's something that they need. But if we're not, wired to be a words of affirmation type of person, I think we are so focused on finding out what our love language is, but we may not know how to address somebody else's love language if their polar opposites are fundamentally different.
Absolutely. You hit it on the head. Absolutely right. And we got to ask the question too. Like, if your love language is quality time, right? What does that look like for you? So I might think, oh, your love language is quality time. So if I spend an hour with you at night, before we go to bed and watch TV together, then that's good enough. Well, have you asked that person, what does that really look like? That might mean that you want you to sacrifice some time to be with them. That might mean something totally different for them than what you assume. So we got to ask those questions too.
So, good gracious. So with the last thing I want you to comment on, and we're going to have to wrap it up and definitely plan for a part 2. One of the things you said you definitely wanted to talk to us about, and talk to our audience about, whether they're catching it live or catching the replay, is the disconnect. The disconnect now between men and women. How do you perceive the disconnect, or how do you perceive what the disconnect is, and how can we, if you're catching us now live or later, how can we work together to fix that, or at least work to fix it, so we can have healthier relationships?
Oh yeah, I mean, so here's what's happened in my head, and so it's what I see going on in the world. So you had kind of this women's empowerment movement that happened, right? You had the women's empowerment movement, which is great for so many reasons, correct? So then that's women started to rise and feel great about themselves and be empowered, right? And then men started to feel like, dang, there's no room for me anymore in this space. And so now you see this kind of men's empowerment movement going on right now. You're starting to see it. You see it on the internet and in the manosphere and all these other places. And so,
there's a manosphere? Where that at?
Look, if you go there, it's gonna be heavy for you. Okay, it's a heavy place. I don't know if you want to go there.
I don't want.
It ain't great.
I'll be in there dropping grenades and blowing shit up.
So here's what you got. So you got this polarization, right? You got these overly empowered women, right, who feel like they don't need men over here, and then you got this other group of men who are like, well, if they don't need me, I ain't gonna be a man, right? It's like it's like this polarization, and what I've learned is, what it is really is two sets of people just wanting to be heard. That's it. It's two sets of people that want to be heard. But what instead of doing what I think we should do to bring us closer together, which is seek to understand each other and have productive conversations and listen to one another, right? Those are things that are productive. But instead, what we do is we just fight each other, and we go like this, and it brings us further apart. And so now we have low tolerance for each other, but yet we still want to have sex with each other.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Let's put a pause there. Like we still want the physical, but we don't want to put in the work.
Exactly. We don't want to seek to understand each other. We just want to be physically together and then still hate each other. And I'm like, how counterproductive is that? It's not good for longevity. It's not good for families. It's not good for relationships long term. So my point here is, what I would ask anybody in the audience to do is to start to seek to understand. Because what most people do is they get confirmation bias. They seek the confirmation bias. They seek the content. They seek the people that are going to confirm or affirm what they already believe. So they go to the same homegirl. They go to the same homeboy. They go to the same pages on Instagram or wherever it is, same YouTube channels that just affirm it over and over and over again. They never stop to say, you know what? Let me go get an alternative perspective. Let me go seek to understand why Yolanda feels that way. Why do women feel this way about this? Why do men feel this way about this? What could I be doing differently? We don't do that. We just keep feeding ourselves the pills, right? And so my ask here for people that are watching is please seek to understand the opposite sex. If you want to be with the opposite sex, seek to understand those people. Seek understanding, and look for an alternative perspective. That's what I would say.
And I think that that's important. James makes a comment that I think you might want to chime in on as we wrap up. And I think this was when you were addressing the femininity issue, where he says, I don't agree. I love and admire progressive, confident women. Respectfully, I find them sexy and interesting. Yeah. I read our conversation to be, it's not about being, it's about feminine energy as it relates to being confident, to being sexy, to being interesting. That those things you can have both. You can still be feminine. You can still be feminine and be very confident and be sexy and be interesting without having to lose yourself in that process. So I don't want to misread what your comment is, James. So feel free to expand on that if you want to. But I think part of the advice that you were giving Angie and others when we were talking about that is that her concern was being the aggressor all the time and what that looks like. And I think what you're saying from a male's perspective, that feminine energy is very, very attractive as it attracts other people, but not to say that to the exclusion of being not being confident or being weak-minded or being a yes woman or doing all of those things, because you can do both. You can absolutely be feminine as hell, but still be sexy, still be confident, still be progressive, still be all of those things. But it's just a matter of finding whatever that balance looks like for you. And as Edward says, seek to understand. So,
yes.
ooh, child, I wish we had more time, but we gotta go. We gotta go. So listen, part 2. We didn't even get into the sex part, man. We were talking about why I want to talk about why women fake it. Why? Oh God, so much.
We doing a part 2. We gonna lead with that.
We're gonna lead with that because Lord, I'm shy. And this manosphere, I'm curious about this manosphere. I don't know if I want to go and look for that place.
Look, I don't know if you want to go.
Me and Angie gonna go over there and blow it up.
Hey, look, the men over there different now. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't want any parts of that. So listen, if you are not following Troy, make sure that you follow him as at exclusive. XKLUSIVE5 is on your screen. That's also your website, if I'm not mistaken. Exclusive
thoughts. Yep.
Exclusive thoughts.
That K is for the Kappa in me. That's actually my line name.
Is it? Is it really?
It is. Yeah.
Definitely makes sense. Definitely, if you not, because you have the ebook that's available, Teach Me How to Love, is on the website as well. They can get the ebook, and then I think you have the video. The last time I checked is up there as well. But definitely follow here. Follow your Facebook page. Definitely check out the website. My favorite place is IG. Best IG reels, especially when you be hit. I was expecting you to have the book and hit the camera.
What you mean? you get it tonight, right there.
It's about time. We gotta wait till 9:15 for you to hit the camera.
I had to respect your audience first. Now I'm comfortable, so now I'm gonna hit it all the time.
Yeah. Well, we'll lead off with that the next time. So definitely make sure that you're following him. If you haven't already done so, like I said, like, follow, and subscribe at all things at the Combo Pod Show. So the next shows next month are about ultimately following your dreams. And I'm talking to 2 very unique individuals and their stories. So the next show next month is on March the 23rd, a month from now. We're doing those 2 shows later in the month. Will be author Derek Barnes. And his story is fascinating in terms of how he got into writing children's books that have now become internationally known. We're going to be talking to him live here on The Conversation at 8:00 on March the 23rd. The following week, which will be March the 30th, my guest will be none other than Larry Mims. Y'all know him as No Limit Larry. Here locally in Charlotte, we're going to be talking about his story as well. So make sure, if you haven't already done so, make sure that you subscribe to YouTube channel. You can catch all the old episodes there, including this one. So if you got the link and you didn't catch part of it, you can use that same link to catch the replay, which will be posted here shortly. And of course, if you've not already done so, go check out the website at thecombopodshow.com, because all of the episodes from seasons 1 through now season 4 are all there. And share this podcast definitely, because there was a lot of nuggets in here, a lot of good stuff. So make sure that you share it with people who can definitely benefit from it. Troy, thank you so much, man. So we already know what we lead with the next show, man.
We already
know. So y'all go ahead and get your minds right, because that's what we're talking about.
We're talking about faking orgasms, just so y'all know.
That's what we starting with. And then wherever it goes from there, it's gonna be crazy. And I'm here for all of it. So y'all have a good night. Definitely take care of yourselves. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.